All right. Thank you all for your patience. I know we're a few minutes behind schedule. Wanted to bring everyone together to give an update on the events that occurred over this past week, particularly this past weekend. I think it's been well reported that we had 5 shooting incidents that occurred, one of which included an officer-involved shooting. And we're going to go over those incidents briefly. I think that they've been covered to some extent. We have received several media questions around those individual incidents, and I'll answer the questions that we've received within my comments. And then, of course, we'll have time for questions at the end, realizing that these are all still ongoing investigations. On March 16th at 2:45 a.m., our first incident occurred in the 700 block of the North IH-35. This was an incident where there were individuals standing outside waiting for pickups by transportation network companies when a vehicle drove by and fired shots at the crowd. This resulted in 3 people receiving gunshot wounds, non-life-threatening wounds that they were transported and treated for. There are no arrests yet made in this case. We are still looking for suspects in this case, and this is being investigated right now as an aggravated assault with a deadly weapon. Again, this is still an ongoing investigation, and we're looking for any information that the community can provide us. If anyone was there, if anyone has information, if they witnessed it, if they had their cell phone going, recording anything, all of this will be helpful to us. And I'll give contact information at the end of at this press conference here about where to call. But again, we ended up with 3 victims that received gunshot wounds in that incident to both their arms and their legs. But again, they were non-life threatening. We did identify 4 individuals that day, but they turned out not to be the persons of interest that we were looking for. The only suspect description that we have at this time is that the suspects were black males in their 20s, but that's the limited information that we have on that case. A short while later, again on March 16th in the early morning hours at 5:02 a.m., we had a shooting that occurred in the 2500 block of Longview Street. This involved an 18-year-old white male who received a gunshot wound to his leg. This occurred at the Access West Campus Apartments where the victim lived. He was transported and treated for his injuries. We have not made any arrests in this case. It remains an active investigation. And again, a question was asked about potential charges. We are looking at this one as an aggravated robbery with a deadly weapon at this time based on where we're at with the investigation. Again, we had 1 victim in that incident who was transported with a gunshot wound to his leg. He has since been released from the hospital. And then the only thing that we have in that case was 1 witness has been identified at this time. The identity of the suspect is still unknown, and again, as with each of these cases I detail, if there's anyone in the community that has information, we would ask that you please contact us on our tip line. The 3rd incident occurred on March 16th at 6:21 a.m., a short while after the one I just described, and this occurred at the Denny's in the 7100 block of North IH-35. This one was a dispute between a customer and an employee over non-payment that resulted in a shooting. There have been no arrests in this case either, but we are working on leads on a suspect at this time. We have, we're looking at this as an aggravated assault with a deadly weapon as well. And in this incident, the victim was shot and received wounds to both his chest and his arm. He too has been released from the hospital. We do have a suspect vehicle description at this time, and it is registered outside of the city of Austin. So our investigators are following up on those leads at this time. And the only suspect description that we have in this case is that the suspect was a black male. And again, this case remains under investigation. The 4th incident occurred also on March 16th, but in the late evening hours at 11:56 p.m. And this is the incident that occurred in the 300 block of East 6th Street. This was a disturbance that took place in which 3 individuals assaulted the victim. The victim was shot during this incident. He was transported to the hospital as well for treatment. The case is still open. We have not identified suspects in this case, and again, we're asking anyone that was in the area, anyone that may have information, anyone that may have recorded something, please come forward and let us know as we're actively looking for suspects in that case. one thing that was noted on that instance, as was the first occurrence on the frontage of I-35, was the measures that the Austin Police Department officers went to provide life-saving services. In particular, applying tourniquets to stop the bleeding on these victims, as well as allowing EMS to quickly get in and out of a very congested entertainment district with victims that needed immediate care for these serious injuries that they suffered. The final incident that took place occurred on March 17th at 2:50 a.m., and this was the officer-involved shooting. I will not go through the sequence of everything that happened. I think that was detailed thoroughly early yesterday morning after the incident. Updates that have occurred since that time and has been reported is we did locate one of the suspect vehicles, that being the Maserati Levante. That vehicle had been dumped over in the Mueller neighborhood, and there was one deceased individual that was found inside that vehicle. And as we reported, the description and the clothing of the deceased matched that of one of the suspects that we have on video involving that shooting that took place again that early morning. We're continuing to work on leads on this case. We do have a possible identification on the suspect. It is not, I'm sorry, on the deceased. He has not been positively identified yet. That's the job of the medical examiner's office. However, preliminarily, we do believe that we have identified him, and he is an individual from the Dallas Metroplex area, not here locally. We still need the public's assistance in this case. Anyone who has information on the whereabouts of that Monte Carlo that we described, again, a dark colored Monte Carlo with the white racing stripes across the hood and the roof and the rear, or the occupants of that vehicle, we're asking that you come forward, or again, anyone that was in that area when this incident occurred, if you happen to have information or were videotaping, please call us at 512-974-TIPS. We're looking for any and all help that we can get in that case. There have been a lot of questions about the plans that we're going to put forward to address this spike in violent crime. And these are plans that are currently under development. I have already met with members of my team this morning. In one way, what we're doing is we're reaching out to the promoters of both South by Southwest as well as our partners at the Downtown Austin Alliance so that we can plan for South by Southwest next year. As we do in any year, we do an after-action report. We look at things that went well, and we look at areas where we need to improve. The incidents that took place over this 48-hour period that I just described will be within that discussion. Regardless of whether they were a direct result of South by Southwest or not, we've not yet determined that. The fact that they're occurring in and around the entertainment district where South by Southwest is really centralized, and they're occurring during that same time period, it's important that we pay attention to that during our planning. This was the 1 week of the year where we have the most police officers in the entertainment district given the South by Southwest Festival. In fact, the officer-involved shooting that took place within a mile radius, there would have been almost 300 police officers on duty at that time. So this is partly a issue that we will address by staffing as we go forward, because that's not normally the staffing level we have in the entertainment district. But we've also seen increases in violence in the entertainment district previously to South by Southwest. We are having officers retrieving more weapons, more firearms off of individuals, and as has been well reported, we have had other shootings that have taken place in 6th Street and the entertainment district over this past year as well. These are all things that we're paying attention to and that we're going to work on to put a plan together to address. Again, part of that will be staffing. We are working on what staffing will look like over the upcoming weekends, but the bigger picture will be looking at what else do we need to do? What commonalities, if any, can we find? Are there specific venues that are drawing in crowds that are the ones that are involved in these violent crimes? And if so, what can we do to work with that establishment to partner with them to improve the safety in the district? Or if they're unwilling to partner and work with us, are there violations that they're committing through their TABC licensing? We will bring any resources to bear that we can, again, if we can figure out any commonalities or any businesses that are drawing in this criminal element that we've seen infiltrate our entertainment district and really bring the level of violence to a level that we've not seen before. So we don't have, or I don't have all the answers today, because again, we're just now in the early stages of putting together a plan, and this will be a detailed plan, not something we want to throw together in a day. But I know that there's been a lot of interest in what we're doing, where we're at with the investigations. All of these are still ongoing investigations, so there's not a lot of additional information we can put out at this time. However, I will now open it up for questions.
Chief, can you tell us who you're looking for in the officer-involved shooting? How many suspects are you looking for?
At this time, what we know in the Levante, in the Maserati Levante, we believe that was occupied by 4 individuals. We do know that we've accounted for what we believe is 1 individual, but we know on the video we see 3 people get out of that Maserati. All appear to be black males. 2 of them were wearing jeans and light-colored hoodies. The 3rd one was wearing darker clothing. And again, we believe there was a 4th person in that vehicle that did not exit the vehicle. And then from the Monte Carlo, we do not have descriptions of the individuals that were inside the Monte Carlo. Do believe that there were at least a driver and then someone in the rear passenger seat, because that's where the firearm seems to have been fired from.
Do you know if the fatal shot, and I know it's early, was from the 4 officers who fired, or was it from the earlier bullet he received, seemed like to his midsection, that had him going back to his car?
That will all be contained within a medical examiner's report, and we don't have that information at this time.
Chief, do you know yet if those suspects in the OIS, as well as maybe some other suspects in other shootings, if any of them for sure attended South by related events, whether they're official or unofficial events?
We do not have any information yet of their attendance at South by Southwest. That will be part of the investigation. The only thing that we do know at this time and that we can put out is that one of the individuals was from the Dallas Metroplex area.
Do you have any concerns about those unofficial events at all? Because we do see hundreds of events happening at the same time on 6th Street. So do you have any concerns about those?
We always have concerns about pop-up events, but we plan for that. When we do our South by Southwest planning, we plan for the events that we know of, but then we also make sure we have groups of officers that are able to quickly respond to incidents that might pop up somewhere in the community. Keep in mind, the incidents that we're talking about here, at least the ones that involve the entertainment district, were all within the confines of 6th Street or immediately contiguous to it, and that does not include obviously the one that occurred in West Campus or the one that occurred at the Denny's. But we do pay attention to the pop-up events because you don't necessarily know who that act is ahead of time to really plan for what type of a crowd might respond. And we have in the past become aware of an artist or a group that was going to come to town and has a following and a history in prior cities and prior concerts of having significant violence associated with them. And we proactively go out and we talk with that venue about whether or not they want to host that event, and if so, what are their security plans, and we will continue to do that.
Chief, yesterday the APA expressed concern about certain groups with gang activity or gang following. So what is your concern about that in relation to South by Southwest?
Well, again, I think this is something that we have to pay attention to when we plan these events. If we have an artist or a group that has a documented history of violent attendance at their concerts, which some of these groups do, then I think that's something that we have a responsibility to take a look at and pay attention to and determine whether or not that's someone we want to bring to a sanctioned event. It's hard to control for the unsanctioned pop-up events, and that's why we do everything we can do to monitor social media, to pay attention to those events that are not part of the official activities so that we can plan, if possible, for those, but we'll maintain that posture to have officers that are mobile and able to respond to those pop-up events.
Chief, before South by Southwest, the department made some adjustments on staffing, putting the patrols focused in the entertainment district and then responding to anything outside. Do you think that if those changes weren't made prior to South by Southwest, that the officer-involved shooting, some of the things that happened on 6th Street, East 6th, that could have been worse if it wasn't for those boots that are already on the ground?
You know, I think one of the greatest deterrents to crime is a visible police presence, and so the resources that we bring to the entertainment district during this festival and festivals like these is for that very purpose. Number one, the visible presence is important, but then also the response capability. So yes, the fact that we had that many officers there allowed what was an extremely violent situation to be taken under control very quickly. And I said this the other day, when you watch that video and you see this shooting break out, and it is right out of a Hollywood movie, and what you see people running away as fast as they can, and you see the men and women of the Austin Police Department running right towards that person with the gun as he's shooting at them. it is a sense of pride that you have men and women who are serving our community and willing to put their lives on the line. Now again, we had almost 300 officers in the entertainment district at the time that the officer-involved shooting had occurred. So that visible presence is important, and that's what we're going to look at as we go forward with our staffing plans, is how do we maintain an adequate level of staffing so that we can ensure that we safely provide services to an ever-growing entertainment district. It's no longer just 6th Street. Now it's 6th Street, it's 4th Street, it's Rainey Street, it's the Red River District, it's the East 6th Street District that's really grown, and West 6th Street has grown tremendously. And so there's just a lot of resources are being spread much, much wider, and this is something that we are now going to address, obviously through staffing, but also looking at other ways to ensure safety.
Do you have any further concern to public safety considering none of these shooters have been caught?
Well, again, not knowing the motive behind them, other than what we can anticipate from the officer-involved shooting, it was a relatively minor crash. There was very minimal contact, but that's where at least we believe these two groups came together. We don't know if there was an altercation earlier in the evening. We don't believe the vehicles were following each other because they were coming off two different streets. They hit at a 90-degree angle. So it's hard to say that there is any type of an ongoing threat because these do appear to be isolated incidents that are not connected. But what motivated the Denny's appears to be someone that didn't want to pay their check. The officer-involved shooting was a crash. Not sure yet as far as what the altercation was that took place on the frontage road behind us here. We know that there were words exchanged between groups that led to a car driving by and shooting at them. So again, we don't have any reason to believe that the community is any greater danger right now. But I would always advise, as we do, pay attention to your surroundings, know who you're with. Whenever you're in a large venue or anywhere, know where the exits are in case you had to get out. And that's even if you're just at the movies with your family. Unfortunately, we live in a day and age now where the threat can come in many different ways in many different places. And it's incumbent upon all of us, even in our personal time and our personal spaces, to do what we can to help keep ourselves safe.
I hear what you're saying about the police presence, the increased police presence. It's a good thing. But on the flip side, the biggest incident happened right outside the police station with those 50 police officers in this area, and it didn't deter those gentlemen from taking action. What's your response to that, and how does that make you feel?
If you have someone that is committed to carrying out a violent act and is willing to potentially be arrested or get injured in the carrying out, it's very difficult to intercede with that. So yes, these did take place in an area that had the highest concentration of police officers, not only in the city at that time, but really at any time in the city, given that it's our largest festival. So the police presence is only one part, and that's why when we talk about this planning that we need to do and where we're going to go, it's going to be these discussions about what other steps can we take, what other measures can we implement to ensure safety. And that will be, again, as I spoke about, identifying venues that may be bringing in those acts that are drawing this crowd. If that's one of the commonalities that we see, working with them, or if they're unwilling to work with us, then making sure they're in compliance with all of their regulations. This is something that's going to go beyond just police staffing, but police staffing is a major component of whatever plan we put in place. Because yes, these incidents happened in a very populated area with a large number of officers, but think about how much worse they could have been if we didn't have that large police presence that was able to immediately respond and restore order.
Chief, going back to the Maserati, with the individual found in the Maserati, has it been determined whether he discharged a weapon at the Monte Carlo or at police?
That's part of the ongoing investigation right now. Thank you.
Thanks, Chief.